CAUSENETIC family.
Hey, welcome to the CAUSENETIC podcast.
CAUSENETIC means being a person or thing that gives rise to a phenomenon that is dynamic or energizing.
Hey, we're tackling topics and telling the truth.
I'm Rodrigo Ross.
Hey, and I'm Keith Benson.
Today we are talking about vanished. Poof. Disappeared. You see, I knew this was going to be a problem. That is not what I'm talking about.
I was thinking when you said vanished, like I was just
going to say vanished and then just... No one would listen.
So then what are we talking about then?
We're talking about this idea of things just disappearing, whether it's populations, whether it's things from your memory, whether it's talent from your organization, whether it's money from your pocket. This whole idea of poof, vanished.
Because you got a lot of strong communities, but yet people are not coming back to their community.
Or just leaving in greater numbers than... So it always fascinated me, right? So when you grow up in an under-resourced community, right, the definition of success very rarely entails you staying in that community. And so by default, are you a part of the problem or the system that keeps that community down? Because somehow we're thinking when we made it, we know we made it when we don't live here anymore. But what if we quote unquote make it and stay here? Do we build the community? Like that concept of community vanishing, right?
Yeah, so because when you have a little bit more knowledge, you begin to understand. So as a child and growing up in Dale's home in Portsmouth, Virginia, P-Town representing.
Oh gosh, here we go.
What I knew of in the projects was fun.
Yeah.
And then we moved out to...
As a kid, though.
As a kid.
Right.
And then we moved out to the suburbs where it's supposed to be better.
Because your parents didn't think the projects were fun.
Right.
Right.
So hearing gunfire, on the weekend...
That was fun to you?
That's what I knew.
Oh, well, yeah.
And so then I moved out to the suburbs and...
No gunfire.
There's quiet.
Yeah.
Like me and my brother playing one-on-one touch football.
Wow.
Right. And so you begin to live that life in the suburbs and believing that, wow, this is what arriving is.
Right.
But yet I'm gone away from the community. And so...
And did you ever venture to go back to a community, if not that particular one like that?
I didn't. But what I did choose to do, because what I felt my calling was to go back and work in that community to try to help better that community.
Yes.
And so try to pour in knowledge into other young people to be able to help them to be able to see. And so whether people choose to go back or not, the hope is that at least you try to go back and help out and volunteer in that space to bring up some other young person.
Yeah, but even in that, this is a dilemma, this idea of vanishing, like whole populations, particularly the populations who have more resources that could benefit a community, just kind of up and leave. They vanish.
It's just like this gradual escape, right?
Yeah.
It's just like this slow leak just, going on, and then all of a sudden it's like the talent is gone.
Yeah. And you don't...
And the community maybe it doesn't change.
And like I said, the fascinating part for me, because I absolutely understand that, because growing up in a very much low socioeconomic environment, that was the description of success. That's when your teachers talk to you, when your parents talk to you, when even the community elders or the adults who still live there, they always kind of planted this seed that you'll know you have arrived when you don't have to live around here. And I don't think they meant it to say like right here is such a terrible, terrible place, because I remember having some of the best memories ever growing up in those communities, right?
Sure enough.
But I think they were trying to seed in you this ambition to do more and do better, but inadvertently, right, this collateral damage, inadvertently, we still leave these depressed communities because the folks who quote unquote made it don't really ever go back and live there.
Yeah.
Not in the same proportions that they're leaving, right?
And I'm not saying, because projects is what I grew up, so in the federal system, right? I mean, I can't go back to that.
Well, now there's a systemic barrier that you can't go back if you wanted to, not in that particular
Now,
complex.
Prentice Park, which was just a few blocks up the road, I could have gone back into that community right there, which is just, again, a couple of blocks away. But somehow, some way, I think we got to get back to a place that we are caring about these communities in such a way that we can continue to bring up people. So take the talent, the rich talent that is there, and I'm saying my lens is in the projects. So like, how do we get people from young people out of the projects, put them in situations, giving them the resources that they need so that they can have the skills and talents to be able to continue to pour back into that community right there. Because my hope is that, I know for me, my deal is let me reach young people where they are. In particular with Black boys. Like, how do we get them to a place, give them all the skills and talents that they need, and try to shine up the skill sets that they have so that they can flourish. And to flourish in such a way that our communities are getting better each and every day. We got to be able to figure that out.
Yeah. It's a conundrum. But I'm always fascinated about that. Like, is it right? Is it wrong? It's probably not that cut and dry, but here we are. But communities aren't the only spaces or places or things that experience this whole idea of vanishing. Like, I would venture to say that if you talk to many an HR person or a leader in organizations across the country, especially YMCAs, they would say they are experiencing this very same conundrum, this idea of vanishing right now in terms of staff just disappearing, right?
Talent is just leaving. Right. I mean, when you talk about, for instance, for the YMCA, it's used to be young people's first job.
Right.
Like, now they have options.
They're like, so I don't want to work there. I'd rather work at.
The lifeguard that, we used to be able to pay minimum wage, $7.25. They're like, well, I got options.
Lots of them that pay better.
I appreciate the last 2 years that I worked for you, but, this organization over here is offering me $15.
And then you have people who have just really come into their own and are having this awakening about what they want to do, how they want to do it. So many people are venturing off trying to establish businesses of their own. And some people are moving places, right? Like, they're staying in the same industry. They just may be moving from places. I know here in Texas, we're absolutely experiencing this influx from both coasts.
Right.
So we've seen lots of people moving down here from California, and then lots of people from the East Coast. And so I can imagine that the businesses, right, that are still in person on those coasts are experiencing that leakage, because physically people have just moved, even if they stay in the same industry or what have you. But this idea of you could just come and your workforce is just greatly diminished and you don't really know how to stop it. And I'm not sure if anybody has really put their finger on what exactly is causing it. Like, there are lots of things that people are saying.
Well, here's the deal, though. I mean, kudos to Texas and the College Promise, right? And so with College Promise in Texas, it is offering young people free tuition, be able to stay in state. So that the hope is that, hey, if we invest in you in this way, that you stay here in the States. Like, don't take your talents elsewhere.
Because folks are moving around. This whole remote work thing has changed the game.
Yeah, because research shows that free tuition really helps with that cause right there for young people to stay here in the state that they're in order to get that college education.
Man,
because when you think about, I'm telling you that you've been blessed as a parent to have talented young people that are athletes.
Thank goodness. Yes.
But I'm gonna tell you, I've had to write some checks over the last 2 years. I sure wish I could have caught this one a little earlier about the College Promise. They didn't have that with my kids, but writing that check out, and
I'm not jealous. I'm not jealous. I appreciate it. Thank you, kids.
But our workforce got to do some things in order to encourage people to be able to stay. Retention workforce retention is a real thing.
It is a very real thing.
You're gonna have to organizations are gonna have to sacrifice.
Yeah.
I mean, when they said we got what referral fees going on right now.
I mean, to get good ones
at $500
to refer somebody.
I said that's about to become my side hustle.
Let me flip my roll of that. I'm referring everybody.
You gotta try to keep talent and recruit.
Talent.
I mean,
because of the leakage.
Yeah, when you offer me an opportunity of $500 for each person, like I become your recruiting tool at that point right there.
Yes, indeed.
You know, I try to use that 10,000 plus network on LinkedIn to recruit some folks.
And the thing is, what pushed us to this extreme, to offering those kinds of incentives, because that kind of incentive was unheard of 2 or 3 years ago. This whole idea of people are vanishing from the workplace.
But we took it from $50
to $500. We are adding zero.
Yes. And that 500 will change the decimal place on your and
we added a layer of, not only does the person referring get the $500, the person who came and stayed gets $500.
Exactly. Young person.
That's a lot of $500.
Hey, when you look at this, I mean, the young person who comes to work as a lifeguard.
Yeah.
You know, call them 18, they're about to go off to college.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so one, they can get $500.
Right.
And then, like, I'm sure they got a buddy or two.
Yep.
And those buddies get $500 to go along with. That's, you know, that's, man.
And then they get another $500 for referring your buddy.
$1,500 like on top.
And this is before you even work, right? Like this is before your just regular paycheck for the hours that you work, because of this idea of talent is vanishing.
Right.
Like people are really trying to grasp at straws, so to speak, to ensure that they have enough folks. College Promise is one way to do that from a statewide level.
Right.
But locally, businesses are employing some really creative tactics. I mean, things like they're changing incentives and perks and the way you work and bringing in ice cream every Friday and allowing you to wear this or bring your kids. I mean, just really rethinking the way people work to incentivize and try to stop this vanishing act that's going on.
And it shifts over to the workplace culture. Like you're making people happy. I was just talking to someone who's leaving the and going to work for another nonprofit, and that, you know, when they said with PTO, they get unlimited PTO.
Wow.
Which
is a concept, because truth be told, you're not going to take unlimited PTO, but it's good to know you got it. Right? Like most people are not going to take it, but it's a great benefit.
But like childcare is a real thing.
Now that's a very much a real thing.
This job for this lady I was speaking with, her job forced her to be able to travel, and the company will pay for childcare because they don't want the parent to feel some type of way that they don't have the proper childcare, or they can't afford to pay the proper childcare in order for them to travel.
Wow. See? Trying to stop the leakage.
But it is some ways to just be really creative about how do you retain the talent that you have.
And stop the vanishing act. You know, another thing that's vanishing, I think, is people's memory of the struggles of the pandemic at its peak. You know, as human beings, we have, and sometimes for a very good reason, we have short memories. I think sometimes the memory is short because whatever we went through was so traumatizing and triggering that maybe it's your brain's way of protecting you and itself. Like, I'm not just going to remember this for a long time. I'm not going to dwell it. So some things we just they just dim. But I'm finding now, I was reading an article that said foundations and other funding sources are absolutely slacking back on the amount of funding and support they're giving for activities that were born in COVID that organizations are still doing, even though data shows us that the things that were born in COVID and the needs that were really amplified in COVID are still very much needs today, right? But the memory of the funders is kind of fading, and I'm like, was it that bad? I don't really remember. Like, this vanishing act of sorts is happening in the funding space, and now that flow, those resources aren't there. And then what happens? The folks who are impacted the most by these things are once again kind of relegated to the fringes of society. They don't necessarily get the support they need. Organizations go back to perhaps business as usual. And And should we allow that to happen? Like, what do you do if you are experiencing, or if you are an organization, and how do you speak up and advocate? Like, hey, this, don't forget, it wasn't that long ago. I know we're not wearing masks on planes anymore, but we still got some serious challenges in this country.
You know, we were talking about, you know, this extra money, and while that sounds good, like, that's not the long-term fix. And so it's still a part of workplace culture that has to shift in such a way that keeps people there.
Yeah.
So my $500, while I'm happy about that, you know, for that one time, but, you know, $500 a week, I can go spend that right now. That ain't
I can buy me a good pair of shoes with that one. Just one pair.
I mean, one shoe.
Well,
based on the cost of toothpaste. So
I think you're trying to do math right now. I don't know if I appreciate that.
We're not going to go there. But workplace organizations, companies, like, you got to be able to do something different in your workspace so that people don't want to leave.
Yeah. Speaking of different, so this conversation has been ruminating across at least the YMCA movement, right? So many YMCAs experienced a different version of themselves organizationally during the pandemic, right? And the talk was, how much of that do we keep, and how much of our pre-pandemic persona do we try and get back? So in terms of vanishing acts, whatever happened to the conversation and people really leaning in, and the organization really feeling good about the work we were doing in the pandemic, and getting more grassroots and proximate to communities and hands-on and community-driven? Like, I don't hear as much as the conversation. Like, that desire, that bend seems to be vanishing as well. Like, YMCAs just want to go back to, so the credibility that we got during the pandemic from shifting and really getting close to communities, the support that we got, the ability to kind of reinvent ourselves as a brand and an organization, like, that didn't happen. That just, I don't know. I'm a bit confused. I don't understand. That to me is another vanishing act. The conversation is vanishing. Or maybe the desire. I don't know. I'm confused. Yeah. I don't know.
Well, it don't take much, but.
Well, that part. It don't take much, right? And not to say that advocating that should be the only thing that the YMCA does, but it should play a significant part in the portfolios, particularly if it didn't before, right? In an organization's portfolio. If they were doing very little of that kind of work and they found themselves in the shift, we don't just throw out the baby and the bathwater. Like, you got to keep keep the baby. You got to keep something. Keep the baby. But man. that whole idea of that mindset, is it vanishing?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know.
Yeah, we gotta be able to. I mean, this pandemic has just thrown everybody for a loop. You got, you know, everybody who needs extra staff. You know, and in some ways is that, you know, are there ways that you can support other people? You know, from a program service standpoint, organization reached out to me. It was like, hey, do y'all train lifeguards? I was like, yeah, we do. And it's, you know, good organization. You know, we worked together before. It's like, hey, can you train our lifeguards? I'm like, well, that's
I'm going to tell you. If we like them, we gonna try and steal them.
Well, I said we're not in position to be able to train them because we need lifeguards.
Right, like, I'm gonna steal them if I train them.
But here's the sweet part. It was a church that came to us. They have a pool, but they were able to hire some guards, and so they're able to hire guards to be able to open up for a certain amount of time. But they did not have enough guards to be able to service their day camp, which they have a fairly large day camp. And so the sweet spot where we met at was, you know, hey, bring your kids over here. We can teach them how to swim, and, you know, we can have open swim time for them. And so, you know, where they have the talent, both of us need talent.
Yeah.
But, you know, they were short here. But, you know, hey, because what we have to offer, you know, we can still be able to service their program.
I love that. So that's not vanishing, right? This idea of collaboration is not a vanishing thing. I can appreciate that, which is very good. I was nervous for a minute because so many people locked arms, right? And just to get to this common goal and this common solution. But I don't know, is the grasp still as tight now that people are kind of going back to the things that they were doing before? Although, you know, by some indicators, the next opportunity, let's call it that, opportunity, right, to rethink and reimagine and recalibrate is going to be a recession, right, that's anticipated. And goodness, if gas prices are any indication, it's going to be next Thursday at 3:00. Like, oh my God.
I tell you what can vanish.
These gas prices, they can vanish.
They can vanish.
For sure.
They can vanish.
Poof, be gone.
Yeah, with that one,
my good gracious.
We're waiting. Well, they still until Labor Day.
Man, but is that an indication, right? That, okay, well, while we may have gotten over the hurdle of one thing, just keep yourself together, because here comes another one. And those same skills and those same collaborative techniques and how we were leaning in to really get proximate and be innovative in getting staff and keeping staff and letting staff kind of listening to them about the best and the most efficient ways for them to do their work. Those ideas better not vanish, because I think we're gonna have to pull them out again.
Right. Yeah, this whole part on vanishing, I mean, we talk about it from a community perspective. We talk about it from a business perspective, organization perspective. You know, we got to be able to find some different solutions, be creative about these solutions, because when I think about the community part of things, is that we need for our communities to continually get better.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
So we got to be able to, raise up talent from out of the communities. You know, in the projects, you know, of course you can't go back there if you're doing better,
right?
Just because of the laws. But there are other underserved, low-income communities that absolutely we can pour back into.
Yeah.
One, we can, invest in homes. When I think about an area in, we're here in Dallas, in the Oak Cliff area, in the communities where it was a neighborhood that was getting older, and we're seeing more younger people coming back to these communities. Reinvesting directly back in those communities, buying up the houses, living in those houses, raising families, so that those families can go to those schools in that community, improve those schools. And so once we improve those schools, we can now improve our community.
It's a cycle.
Yeah, once we improve that community, now we can improve our city. Once we improve that city, now we can improve our state. And then we can improve our country.
Come on, Pastor.
We gotta be able to pour back into young people so that we can change this country.
You know what I do need to vanish, though? This pandemic weight. It's not vanishing. It won't go. And I need some of these Oreo flavors to vanish, because that's part of the pandemic weight problem, that all of these different Oreos have all of these different flavors. But if anything's going to vanish, it should be those two things.
Okay. This is the awkward silence.
That's what I want to vanish.
Supposed to crack a joke or say nothing.
I'm saying, you're supposed to say, yeah, I got pandemic weight too that needs to vanish. Well,
hey, CAUSENETIC family. Thank y'all for listening to CAUSENETIC.
This episode called Vanished.
Subscribe and listen to us weekly.
And don't be shy. Give us a 5-star review.
And as always,
be dynamic.
be phenomenal.
Be CAUSENETIC.